art for me is a matter of life or death. You know, it's not a matter of decoration.
No.
You know. So I think it has to examine some kind of truth and really mean something, because, well, in war people, they give up their life. Mothers lose sons and husbands, and this is terrible.
Yes.
You know, we're here to have life, you know, and so I think it should be looked at.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think that Scottish art has been guilty of, well, burying its head in the sand a bit, you know. And although there is wonderful, beautiful things to celebrate, the most complex and the most extraordinary thing are ourselves and our life and what we, how we manage it, how we feel about our parents and our children and our love, and I like to think that once I talk about my paintings, that people, because it's about the human condition, then I find people know all this anyway, because it's their life too.
Yes.
And well, that's the reason that I want to paint. You know, and why I like a large scale is I can open it up. It's about looking at it and getting into it, you know. It's like enlarging it so I can go in and look at it and feel it and then give it out, you know. So it's very important to me. Well, this painting is called The Trial, and it was made for a very specific village in the north of France called Ast, and the story round about it is that the Hitler Youth Army were withdrawing from this particular area, and the lieutenant, this is the lieutenant who was in charge of them, took his troop on a train. Now this train was supposed to be a munitions train, but in actual fact he commandeered it, and the train was subsequently derailed by the French resistance. And because of that, although no one was hurt, he took reprisals in this village and told the Hitler Youth to round up the men in the village from the ages of 15 to 70, and so they were shot in actual fact. And so the trial itself, these were some of the youth army, Hitler Youth Army, who were brought to trial. They were found by the British Army some years later, and a trial took place. And this is important, I suppose, in the laws of war, what is permissible and what isn't. So the painting was complex to do because I'm trying to bring together in the one canvas a sort of set of information about the trial. I treated the heads of the prisoners almost like sort of portraits, and this was partly due to the research I made in Ast, because they made a documentary of the trial. So with the aid of the digital camera, I was able to almost freeze expressions of the prisoner, and as you can see, I framed them also, so they're more like a strange there's an isolation takes place because of that, and because of the documentary film, one could watch the emotion, the guilt, the frustration, the disappointment, and all these expressions that were actually occurring on the faces of the accused. So this was very interesting to use this method. I hadn't used it before. I don't really work very much from outside photographic material or looking at things. Mostly it's fairly imaginative, but it was important to get a sense of portraiture and the idea of these different heads here. This is the advocate who defended them, and of course this is the scribe who actually had to write down the story as it unfolded about the shooting and the death of the men of these villages. So this is why he is more emotional or more heightened in colour, and you can see the hands are writing the information. And this is the people who attended the trial here. I like very much to work from, to change scale in a painting. Here you have the cluster of heads and memories, you know, and that contrasts with the large head. And this makes for a very exciting visual dynamic, because you can bring a number of things together, and also you can cut across what is obviously logical. The quote at the end, of course, is the witness to this particular incident, and this coat was in the museum itself, and it had the scars of the bullets, and the gentleman who wore it is within the coat. It's like the spirit of him is still there in the coat itself. The column here represents justice, and that's very important in terms of society, that we have this reckoning taking place. And it's a group of villagers at the side just representing the more ordinary people. The verdict was that they were found guilty and condemned to death, but the villagers considered the fact that there had been enough dying, killing, and so they were in actual fact imprisoned. So that was the outcome. But it was a very, very challenging piece to paint. Very interesting indeed. This piece is called The Glorious and the Grotesque, and the piece of wood has actually been sitting in my garden for 20 years. It's pear wood, and it was cut down. A very large pear tree was cut down the year both my parents died. And anyway, it'd been sitting just in the garden, and I passed it almost every day, but eventually I thought I must do something with it. So I only made it really earlier this year, you know, so the wood pieces are new, and of course I think I said to you they'd been motivated by the fact of the exhibition at Cambridge, where I only had one very large wall and the other side was actually a glass wall, so I wanted to use the idea of exhibiting on both sides in this area. But on this particular side are the lovers. Can you see the little mouths and the little eyes? And here you've got a little fetus around this particular side. I haven't carved anything. I've not gone into it with a knife or a tool or anything. It's just simply finding the imagery within the wood itself. This side, well, it reminded me very much of a kind of soldier figure, you know, so that's the glorious, I think. I'm not quite sure why, but that's how I responded to it. When you start looking at this, it's all grooved with the marks of the saw, and so these scores, Well, there are the scores and the marks and the texture of life itself. So it was lovely. It's painted with pigment, and the pigment is bound with a clear gesso. So you get this very dry effect on the surface rather than a paint sitting on it. It's got a feeling of paint being in it. And as some of you may or may not know, I'm partly Scandinavian, and of course painted wood is very much part of the Nordic culture. Well, I like doing this work because I'm off the canvas, and there's a humour with it as well, and that's a very nice relief in life if you're so serious as I am. I've been going to Berlin since 1985, very regularly, and especially over the last 15 years, and the drawings done there are very important because I'm there and I'm doing nothing else but being an artist. You know, I'm not wife or mother or teacher or anything. And so I have this very special time to myself, and I made some really good friends in Berlin. And so I kind of moved to a different level of thinking, and because drawings are so economical, and they're rather like lines of poetry where you have to find the right mark, the right word, the right words. Also, you want to carry intense meaning with very little marks. So it's quite different from painting, where one can work on and layer and change and build. This is a peeling down. So this particular piece was part of work I did in relation to Sachsenhausen, which is one of the concentration camps near Berlin. But really it's also about something else. It's about the face, the generation of faces within all of us, so that as individuals, although we think our face is unique, and it is, we might have our mother's eyes and our father's nose and our cousin's ears and our grandmother's hair, and so we are, it's a generation piece as well. So we are this, we belong to ourselves, but we also belong to the many parts of our family and through the generations of time. I'm interested in the profile because it's like our edge in the world. For example, this is outside and this is inside. And I'm very interested in the inside, but always we have to negotiate with the outside. And so this is a kind of family tree as well, as if we are growing and building. So it's a generation piece. Recently, last year or two, there's a new simplification taking place in my work. Some of it's to do with a kind of cloning. So I think it's partly the way the world is going. So we have the simplified shape of the head and shoulders, but then we have this almost tramash of memory and information going on within us, which we all have. So there is the profile there, but when you look more closely, there are small figures, there are hands. It's been drawn in and almost smeared out again. So I like this. I like this very much, and well, I was very pleased with my work this year in Berlin. I can paint every day of the week, but the drawing takes a very special time, and I can't always draw every day. Just can work on paintings, but there's just has to be a special time element of distillation, I think, and economy, and that is a different process